Hey, it's Norm from Testing.com. I'm in Adam's shop today to give you a how-to for a really cool project. I'm joined by Frank Ippolito. How you doing, Frank?
Hey, pretty good. How are you?
We're not in your shop anymore.
Yeah, this is amazing here.
It's a crazy, crazy awesome place. And Adam has generously let us use it to do a cool molding project. You're going to teach us how to mold a 3D printed object and cast it in resin. So we've done a bunch of 3D printing on the site. We've done stories about, our MakerBot. We've done other types of 3D printing, and I recently had a 3D print of my head made. And this is made with an SLA printer, a relatively high-end printer, but it takes a long time. It's relatively expensive to get one of these printed out. I mean, just the materials alone, about 50 bucks.
Wow.
We want to mass produce this, make multiples.
You need a lot of your heads laying around the office, huh?
Yes, exactly. That's my job, getting weird versions of my head made. And also, we have a 3D print, this is a more traditional 3D print of our logo. How can we mass produce this with molding and casting?
Well, this is pretty much the most simple, basic molding thing that we could probably show. It's just simple dump molds. With the head, we'll probably cut it up the back so we could get it out a little easier, but just build a box and dump rubber in there.
Dump mold. So here's a how-to on dump molding. And this video is brought to you by Tested Premium members. Thanks, you guys. Go to test.com/membership for more information. Let's get started.
All right, cool. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get some foam core so that we can glue these things onto the base. So that one will fit there with plenty of extra room. Okay. And that one will fit there. So we also want to make walls to box this thing in. So if you take some foam core and a knife, an X-Acto knife, and we'll make strips of foam core, we could build a little wall around the little tested logo.
All right. So the idea is that you're creating a box, and we're using foam core right now, but you can really make it out of wood. You can really make it out of any solid material. As long as you can.
If it fits in the cup, you could put it in the bottom of the cup.
Right.
And then just fill the cup.
It just needs to be tight enough so when you pour the silicone in there,
you're not wasting a ton of it.
It's not spilling out.
Yeah.
All right. So you want to get this, like the wall of this one, maybe a little closer to the edge. What's the distance between the edge of what you want to create a mold of and the thickness of your mold, I guess?
It varies. The bigger mold, you want to have thicker bits of rubber to hold its structure. With small molds like this, you probably only need about 1/4 inch all the way around. Because there's a lot of blank space right in here, we don't need to go real far away, so 1/4 inch is really all we need.
The further out you get, you're going to fill up a lot more extra volume that you're never going to use.
You waste rubber.
Okay, so strips here for this thickness.
Yeah, so we'll take Adam's hot glue gun, and I'll just put a couple little
dabs of hot glue on the back, and you're sticking it to the base of that board. Why is that important?
We don't want this to float away when you pour silicone on it.
It shouldn't move.
Yeah, it should just stay right there on the base.
And it should be as close to this base as possible, because this is going to be the top of your mold.
Correct. Again, I only need about 1/4 inch
around each edge.
Around each edge.
And just hot glue around the edge. Now, how much clearance do you want above
Probably only 1/4 inch again.
Also
you don't need a ton of rubber.
All right.
So I could take this, and I can score it a little bit just on the paper side, and then bend that around the corner.
That's awesome. Easier than creating 4 separate walls. Hot glue around all the way around the edge.
Yeah, this glue's pretty hot, so it's shifting a little bit, but I'll take a little bit of this hot glue and just seal all the way around the bottom so that when I pour the silicone in there, it doesn't leak out the bottom of the mold.
Okay, so for this 3D printed head, it's taller, but using the same technique.
Same technique, just taller pieces of foam core.
All right.
Now, because I'm going to split it up the back, I'm going to give it a little bit extra than just 1/4 inch. Maybe about 3/8.
You want a little more silicone in the back of that mold, because that's where you're going to have a seam line.
That's where I'm going to cut it, and when we get to cutting it, it'll make a little bit more sense why I want a little bit more room.
Got it. Okay, so you have the frame made. What's next?
Now we pour in the rubber. So
rubber.
I picked this rubber because it's a 1-to-1 ratio. A lot of silicones are a 10-to-1 ratio, which you need to have a scale to measure out. Like a digital kitchen scale would work. But this one I picked just because it's easy, it's 1-to-1, and I don't really have to think about anything. Because all you have to do is look on the side of these cups, and they have markings. So this one has ounces on this side. So I could do it by ounces, or I could do it by milliliters.
So this is smooth on.
Yeah, this one's called Umu.
Umu. And
this is Umu 30 or
there's
something.
There's a part A and a part B.
Yep.
How much are you going to pour into the cups?
I'm probably going to use about 20 ounces total.
And this is volume?
Yeah, by volume. Volume is different than the weight measurement, obviously. Some of these silicones you can do by weight or volume. This one's 1-to-1 by volume.
That's actually, it's easier for the cup.
I think so.
Same viscosity, same density. You're pouring, 4 ounces and 4 ounces.
Correct. And this one's going to be 10 ounces and 10 ounces.
Perfect. Oh, look at that. Looks like really slimy gack. Do you remember gack?
Yeah, I remember gack.
Yeah, it's like gack. Now, is this toxic?
Silicone, when it's cured, is inert. It doesn't really give off a gas or anything like that. I wouldn't want to rub this in my eye.
Wear gloves, eye protection.
Wear gloves, wear eye protection. You don't need to do this in a ventilated room or anything. This could be pouring just about wherever.
All right, now your part A, I guess, is your second one.
Yep.
And it's a nice different color. This one's pink and blue.
This is pink, so because they have a pink and a blue, when you mix it, you'll know when it's mixed all the way because there won't be any swirls of color.
Should be a nice purple color. It's like Peptol. Help with that digestion.
Help with that barbecue we had for lunch.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So now that I got 20 ounces total, I can stir it up.
Stir it up. Any special technique stirring?
You want to stir until it doesn't have swirls, and you want to try not to whip any air into it. Like I wouldn't use a drill mixer on this because drill mixers usually induce a lot of extra air.
Do it by hand, scrape along the edges.
Scrape the sides for sure. I roll the cup like this and just hold the stick in place just to scrape all the color off the sides.
Okay. And this type of silicone has working time, a pretty long working time.
I think it has about a 30-minute work time.
Oh, that's great.
And then about a 6-hour demold. So
once we take a long time.
We'll have to come back in 6 hours then.
All right. So you have 30 minutes to actually pour into molds. Pop, get rid of any bubbles.
You don't want to wait all 30 minutes. The quicker you can get in there, it'll settle, and any little bubbles that are in there will rise out.
Got it.
And that way you don't have to worry about too much air. This silicone also has a pretty low viscosity, which means that the bubbles will rise out pretty well. And it's called Umu 30, so that means it's a 30 durometer rubber. They also make like a 25, which means it's a little bit softer. So
when do you want to use a stronger rubber versus a softer rubber?
I typically go for the 30 most of the time. If I had something with a lot of undercuts, like a lot of like tentacles or things that maybe needed to like stretch out of a mold, I would use a softer rubber so it'll stretch around it. And the softer rubber means it can stretch without tearing? Usually. There's a tear strength measurement. If you look in the material data sheets, there'll be a tear strength, and so you can compare which rubbers are stronger. Gotta know that material science. You know, it's part of the thing. Like that's kind of how I get along with all this. You really look at all the materials. You look at what all the different qualifications are for materials, and that's how you decide which one you want to use for your project. Okay. So well mixed, and you're just gonna pour right in. Oh, just dump it in. That's why it's called dump mold. Do you feel suffocated a little bit? Just a little bit. Oh, it looks real nice though. And you want to get about that ½ inch above the top. Yeah, we're gonna go up to the very top of the foam core on this one. You can see that I'm seeing a little bit of swirling there, and that just means that I'm getting to the bottom, and there's a little bit of material that maybe didn't get mixed all the way. If you see this, if you just take your finger and just kind of mix it up in there, that'll help get rid of that swirl a little bit. And that's okay to do with the silicone. Yeah, the silicone's not going to kill you. So with this one, because it has those raised letters, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pour a little bit in there. I'm going to take my finger and I'm just going to kind of smear it around on there. Yeah, you want to just in case maybe there's nook and cranny, a little air bubble that it catches or a little corner. When you have geometric things like this, the rubber doesn't always necessarily get into the corner perfectly. So sometimes you have to force it a little bit. All right, Frank, so we're going to mix a little more silicone, fill out this frame here, and then let these molds sit for 6 hours and come back and break them open. Sure.
All right, that was a long 6 hours.
Long 6 hours.
Long 6 hours, but the molds are done.
All done, solid rubber.
Wow, that's
when
crazy.
It spills over on the side, you can just peel it off. So if you have stuff that spills on your table, you just wait for it to cure and then you can peel it off.
Okay, and we also made this extra one while you guys weren't watching of a surprise.
Yeah.
Time to take them out.
Okay, so it's easy. You just kind of pull all this foam core off of the sides.
You mind if I do that for this one?
Sure, go for it.
This is hot glued foam core. Nope.
Want some help?
I don't want to tear the mold. There's no point in preserving this, the foam core.
Foam core? No, it's garbage. You can make wooden walls if you're going to make molds that are the same size all the time.
Yep.
Like when I used to work at a toy company, we had blocks of different sizes and just a library of blocks.
Okay.
That we were able to make boxes very quickly.
There it goes. That is a big chunk of silicone. Wow. So for this one, for this logo, because it was just set flat in the ground, you were able to still yank that off. Now, what does that look like on the inside? That is the negative.
There's a little bit of silicone, little flashing that squeaked in between where all the prints were glued together.
Yes. Yes.
So, but I don't think that that's going to be a big problem.
I love that this has the lines, individual resolution lines, because this is printed from your normal like MakerBot style 3D printer, and so the resolution isn't fine enough, and I like that. I like that you can actually see those lines. Now the tricky part of this, because it's a recreation of this, is that this is multiple colors.
Yeah.
So we want to find a way, I would like to find a way, so when we cast this to have the letters as a different color than the background. Let's see if we can do that. But
yeah, I'll do my best.
All right, so that's one mold. Let's pop this one open. Now this one is my head, and it's wrapped all the way around.
Yeah, sometimes the silicone will sneak underneath because this was just, I just tacked it down with some hot glue. You get this, again, a little bit of flashing, but most of the stuff is just so thin, it'll just peel right off.
Okay.
You can go in there with a knife and clean it up a little bit nicer. Like with the tested logo, we were able to just kind of pop it out. And sometimes with heads,
the heads seem like they'd be easy as well because it goes from wide base to relatively
you gotta get around
the chin.
Yeah. So what we'll do is
you don't want to tear the silicone.
No, you don't want to tear it. So we'll cut it.
Oh.
And so when I cut these things,
you have a strategy for cutting.
Yeah. I think that it would make most sense to just make a little slit up the back of the head, just enough to be able to unwrap it.
Okay.
So
this was like when you were making my life cast and
yeah.
you cut it from the back.
Yeah, so that way there isn't seam lines on the side of the head or anywhere else. Okay. Back of the head is the least invasive.
All right, and you're just using an X-Acto.
Just an X-Acto knife, and I just made a little straight cut. You want to keep your cuts about as 90 degrees to the piece as possible, so that way it'll line up better. Okay. But one of the little tricks that I do is I'll take this line, and without cutting all the way to the piece, I'll kind of zigzag it.
Oh.
And this makes it so that the rubber will line back up.
Right. Because you don't have registration keys,
yeah.
And so this kind of keys them together.
So I only cut it zigzag the first little bit, and then I can go in and make the part of the silicone that actually touches the piece 90 degrees.
So it's only half the thickness is the zigzag, and the rest is straight.
That makes it so that it'll line back up. Yeah.
So you're cutting the zigzag part. You cut from the outside.
Yeah, the zigzag is just a little bit deep.
Your straight seam line in the back. You're putting the knife on the inside and cutting.
It's a tricky thing to do because you need to pull the mold apart with your fingers, and at the same time, it's kind of like using chopsticks. Like your fingers that hold the knife are doing something completely different than the rest of your hand, and you kind of get it, and you just have to kind of tuck it in there and
inside out.
Yeah, kind of cut from the inside, so that it's still, you're not cutting through those zigzags that are in there.
Now, how wide of an opening do you need to be able to stretch in the back to pop something out?
This might be enough.
Oh,
there you go. So then that just comes out real easy. And then when you
looking smug, looking good.
And then when you close this back up, those zigzags make it line up, and you know when it's straight, and it won't miss a line very much.
And on the inside, it's still one straight line.
Yeah. So you can kind of see how that's one straight line in there. So one of the things that I'm a little bit funny about is all these molds have all this spare stuff sitting around, and that drives me a little bit nuts. So
it's technically also flashing.
Yeah, so I take it on the cutting surface and I'll just trim all the sides of the mold. It's mostly because the molds look a little nicer.
You want to treat your mold right.
Yeah.
If you're going to get, depending on what type of resin you use,
you have all this garbage hanging out.
A couple dozen casts out of this.
Yeah.
You want to be able to keep it in a nice place. Is there a proper care of silicone to make it last long?
If you use resins that don't heat up as much, the silicone will last a little bit longer.
And when they don't heat up as much, that means they're longer set times, longer cure times.
Usually a longer set time, yeah. If you use like the proper release, sometimes you can get spray releases like Easy Release 200 or something like that.
Okay.
That'll help the mold last a little bit longer.
Is that a coat before?
Yeah, you just put a little spritz in there, but you don't have to.
Right.
It'll come out just fine.
And then with something like this, with the smooth-on material for the silicone, that'll last about, what, 50?
I would imagine you can get at least 50 pieces out of this if you, aren't misusing it.
So it looks like you're clearing out some flashing on those letters. What's the process of doing that?
Some of this flashing is a little bit, not thick, but just, it's a little bit more than just wants to readily just rip off and slide off. So I'm just taking the knife and just kind of cleaning this up.
Do you recommend doing a lot of cleanup on the inside of a mold, or is it worth just recast or redoing a mold?
Well, because these things were just kind of tacked on there real quick, I didn't seal all the way around the bottom, which is why there's this little bit of flashing here.
Now let's open this one up, because this one was something we did off camera. All right, can I pop this open?
Yeah, this one, it's probably gonna have more silicone that creeped underneath it, just because of the way it was laid out. So it might be easier to do it this way.
Just break it off.
Yeah. And so what I did is, when I had put it on there, I had traced it with a pen, and I pushed a little bit. So now I have this little bit of an outline.
Let's show that real quick again. So, surprise, this is a larger 3D printed tested logo, but this shows you a different technique because you couldn't lay it completely flat.
Yeah, I knew that there was going to be a lot of silicone that creeped underneath it.
Right.
You can see this is pretty thick.
And so by just drawing an outline,
I pushed a little bit into the foam core.
Pushing it in, that gives you the silicone rests in that and gives you an outline on the mold that lets you score and pull out the extra flashing.
Yep. So I know where to cut.
Got it. Now you wouldn't really have this problem if it was completely flush to the base of that foam core.
Like this head was completely flush, so it didn't have much of anything creeping.
But we had magnets on the back of these little logos. All right, let's pop this one out. And it should theoretically just be a larger version of what we got over here.
There you go.
Test it. Let's take a look at that. That turned out real well. Again, it's easier to see where, because this is a 3D print, there's some minor flashing right there that's going underneath those layers. All right, now we have 3 really good looking molds. We got to cast something in them.
Yep.
Let's do it with the small one and my head. And let's try some different colors. So with this logo here, what I'd love to see is if we can get the black for the text, maybe a white for the background.
Okay.
And for my head, let's try to cast in maybe like a flesh tone or something.
Okay. So with this mold, since it's got a cut in it, I want to tape this so that it'll stay shut.
Using normal painter's tape?
Yeah, this is just regular masking tape. I prefer the packing tape with the strings in it. That's really hard to cut.
Tape.
It's got strings in it so it doesn't stretch. So when you're taping this, like a lot of tapes will have a tendency to stretch or pull a little bit. Those strings will keep it from stretching, so it'll stay tighter.
Okay. How much coverage do you need for the tape?
Not a ton. I'm just going around it once just to keep it closed because it's silicone and it's a rubber. It's going to seal itself back up. Right. But you just
and we will cut that tape when we pop it open again.
Yeah. You just want it to be snug enough that it's holding itself closed. You don't want to like crank on it and blow out those seams because if you push too much, it'll start to pucker and it'll deform what's in there. So just snug enough that it's closed.
Let it rest. All right, Frank, what type of resin are we using today?
Well, there's 2 different kinds of resin that I grabbed. There's Smooth Cast 300, which already comes white. And then there's 325, which is kind of a translucent color and we can pigment it. Now I picked up some pigments.
Yep, right here.
Yep. Here
are the tubs.
Here's the pigments.
Great. Now we only need as much as we're going to fill here, so it's not that much. And these are just 1-to-1. They're 2 canisters, just like before.
Correct.
Mixing them equal measure, and the cups, of course, have nice little measurements on them. The only difference between the 300 and 325 is that one you can add colors to?
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
They have the, I'm pretty sure they have the same working time and the same...
And the working time for this is about, what, 15 minutes?
Pot life is 2.5 minutes and cure time is 10 minutes.
Okay, that's not bad at all. So you can have
Pot life means that I have 2.5 minutes to get it into the mold, and cure time is when I can most likely take it out of the mold.
Huh, that's real short. So this is a really quick curing resin.
Yeah, and when you have thinner things like this thin tested logo, will cure slower than the big fat one, because when you have small amounts of resin, it creates less exotherm, which just means that it's heating up less. And
the chemical reactions happen at a slower pace.
Yep.
Got it. Now, when you say 2.5 minutes of that pot life, is that from the moment they start mixing?
Yes.
Okay.
Pretty much.
All right. That's not that long.
That's enough. It's plenty of time to fill these.
Yeah. Let's do the.
We'll do the head first. What I want to do is the one that's in the blue container is the one that's all the way clear.
So as you're pouring, I gotta ask, we're not wearing any protective gear right now. Is that a bad idea?
Well, usually when I do this stuff in my shop, I have gloves. Okay. If you're worried about eye protection, that's always a good thing in case you splash things in your eyes. I'm just mixing something real small, so I'm breaking the law.
Don't mix with your fingers.
Don't use your fingers.
Yes, use mixing sticks.
We have stir sticks to mix things with.
Yes, all right. But it's not toxic. Like these aren't fumes that will.
I wouldn't do this in your closet. I would do it in a well-ventilated room.
Well-ventilated room.
Yeah,
in the garage with the
garage is usually fine. Garage door open. I'm sure that there's all kinds of MSDS info in here, but we're in a pretty good big space.
Please read the instructions.
Please read the MSDS, Materials Safety Data Sheet. So this is the red pigment, and it doesn't need a ton.
Does it matter which of the halves you put in for the pigment?
I think usually they recommend that you put it into the part B.
Okay.
This one happens to be the one that's completely clear. The part A has a little bit of a yellow tinge to it.
Oh, that's nice, dark and red. Okay. How much are you going to put in for that? Oh, wow.
Not very much.
It's very concentrated.
Yeah. I think this one's pretty concentrated.
Okay.
So we'll just
stir that up. That's good. Looks like punch.
Put more in.
So the more you put in, the less opaque, the more opaque it gets.
Yeah. These are mostly dyes, so they're not going to be completely opaque. If you wanted to make it totally opaque, you can add some white.
All right. You have 4 ounces in there.
So there's 4 ounces of red in here, so all I need to do is add 4 ounces.
Does it pour it directly in? That's okay?
Yeah. It's a measured cup, so you could see how much you're putting in there.
All right. Up to just about 8 ounces. You want to get as precise as possible. That half and half mixture. I think it's just a little under 8. Perfect. Now, is this going to be enough to fill this entire...
I think.
This void?
If not, we can make a little bit more.
Yeah, all right.
Maybe it's too much. I don't know.
Yeah, come with some extras. It's splashing everywhere.
Yeah, I'm making a mess.
All right, so here we go.
This
is it.
Sometimes when I pour it in, you might get air trapped like under the chin. So if you kind of tap it around, that'll kind of release any air bubbles that might be trapped in funny spots. If you have a mold with a lot of tricky little undercuts.
It doesn't look viscous at all. Some of the resins I've seen can get really viscous and you get air bubbles trapped in there.
Yeah.
This one looks like pretty fluid.
Yeah, it's got a low viscosity, which makes it easy for casting stuff like this. You won't get very many bubbles.
Wow, it looks like a Jello mold.
Yeah, there you go. And see, look, I only used 4 ounces to fill the whole head.
No, don't chug that. That's not good. We're going to wait for 10 minutes here and get started on the tested logo.
What else do we have I can pour resin in?
Want to try red tested letters?
We'll do red tested letters while I have extra material. Ooh. This might be easier to fill if I had syringes.
Oh, so that's a good point. Is this something you can use other tools to apply in the small nooks and crannies?
Yeah, I think that if I had little tiny syringes, it would be easier to just kind of fill these. And
disposable syringes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this stuff's, as it gets thicker, it starts to, the viscosity raises, like this cup's already getting pretty warm. See how it's glopping now?
Yeah. Wow, that's really fast.
Yeah. So
Holy moly.
If you really...
Oh my gosh, that's only been like 3 minutes or so.
Well, it's 2.5 minutes of work time.
All right, let's fill up those last 2 letters.
I can't, it's gelled.
That's it?
Yeah.
Oh no! Wow. You gotta be really careful about and be prepared when you put that A part or B part in.
Yeah, if you have a resin that doesn't have enough work time, then this is something that can happen to you. Luckily, this one part, yeah, I mean, we're wasting material because we were goofing around and made too much. Yeah. But if you're trying to fill a mold that's really big, you might want a resin that's got a longer work time.
All right.
So now we have this, and we'll just
oh boy,
set that there.
So we had too much resin this time.
Yes.
Now, if you didn't have enough,
Yeah.
and you only got maybe like 3/4 way through the head, you can still mix more resin and pour it later. It'll adhere together without seam lines.
It should, for the most part. You might get little lap lines or a little bit of a stepping because different resins are expanding and contracting at different rates. So one might be cooling down and shrinking back a little bit while the other one's heating up and expanding while they're kind of going off. So you might get a little bit of a step or some funny business. I would try and figure out how to do it so you can pour it all at once. I would rather, like, in this case, it's better that you have more and you have extra, and I guess that's a waste, but.
Does the mold, is it better if it's perfectly dry and like, does the condition of the mold, the surface, matter?
You always want to have your molds cleaned, like in between castings. Sometimes I'll clean it out with a little bit of rubbing alcohol or something.
All right, so we've waited about 10 minutes. This got really warm.
Yeah, the faster setting resins get really hot.
Holy crap, it's not just warm, it's hot.
Yeah.
So how do you know when that's ready? When do you take the mold apart?
You usually want to wait until it's all the way cooled down. This one's still a little bit warm, but I can pull it out.
Okay. All right, so how long has this been?
It's been about 10 minutes.
All right. And they said about a 12-minute, 10 to 12-minute cure time. The same thing of pulling the original out. Oh, and
there we go.
There you go. Let me see how hot this is. Let's examine this. It's definitely warm. That is a fantastic resin replica. We're gonna wait for that to cool down. You can already tell, I mean, having it feel translucent, adding color. We could use flesh tone colors and paint it and do other, cast accessories. That's wonderful. That totally is legit.
Yeah, we'll make a couple other things just to.
Yeah, we're gonna finish the rest of the stuff. Thank you so much, Frank, for coming up to Adam's shop and showing us how to turn 3D printed objects into resin duplicates, copies that look, frankly, pretty amazing. I'm sorry for the pun. Well, thank you guys for watching. I'm Norm, and again, this video brought to you by Tested Premium members. Thank you guys so much for bringing Frank up here. Go to tested.com/membership to learn how we can do more of these video series, more how-tos, more cool projects with people like Frank with makers. I'm Norm. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.